Dance. people, I will invite Alan to come.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for turning up in big numbers. We appreciate and thank you for keeping time. We apologize that the room is starting to become smaller, which is something we never expected, but just bear with us as we move you around a little bit. We understand your leaders in your different capacities, CEOs and directors, but here we'll move you a little bit to make sure we can all have the event running smoothly. My name is Ricky Rapper Thompson. For the first time in history, I'll be the moderator of this event. It's a new career that Federation of Uganda Employers has said I should take it up, and it's a beautiful challenge. And I hope at the end of the day, I'll get good feedback. Thank you. So please make sure to have some breakfast. I think the breakfast is ready. We don't have people bring it to our desk. I think you can just walk out and grab breakfast. There's some tea, some coffee as well as we prepare to get started. Thank you. I have been advised that breakfast will be received at the end. But if you see space on your table, and if you feel uncomfortable and you need a cup of coffee, feel free to go for it. But I've been advised by the CEO that breakfast will be the last activity of today. We're already a little bit late. We have a few items on the program. First is supposed to be arrival, which was supposed to be from 7 to 7:30, and I think everyone is already here. We're supposed to have an opening remark, and then the next activity should be the keynote presentation on the theme, and then have a panel discussion, then possibly forge your way forward and closing remark, and last but not least, get votes of thanks. And then now, the very, very last thing will be for some of us to grab a takeaway cup of coffee and be able to leave. So I just want to recognize the presence of all of you. I don't know everybody, but there are people that you'll take an offense if you don't recognize them or don't realize their presence. The CEO, you're welcome. Mr. Douglas, I see the chair is also around. You're welcome. I also see our guest, Miss Allen Kajina. You're welcome. Plus, all of you in your different capacities, please feel comfortable. Make sure let's move chairs around and allow everyone else to sit. Our chair is a little bit delayed. It chose to drive instead of using a safe border. And I'm sure most of us made it here in time or on time? In time, because we both use safe borders. It's the quickest and the fastest way to get around. Our chair is delayed, and we are sending a few riders to go and pick him. But as he delays, Mr. Douglas, the CEO, will give us the opening remarks as we start our event. Thank you. Please, let's welcome him.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You're very welcome to today's CEO Breakfast Meeting. I'm always delighted when I see members around, But particularly for today, we have a very interesting challenge. I know that is also the crowd pulling power of Alan. That's why so many of us are here and packed. There's no doubt about that. Alan is a keynote speaker for today, an excellent leader, demonstrated that over the years. We have seen a track record at the Revenue Authority, now also at UNRWA. I was just telling your team, Alan, earlier this morning, that when I was driving just around the interchange of Kisasi and Tinda, I looked down and I felt joy in my heart because I've never seen such a kind of a road here in Uganda. So we are having many firsts, many new things that are happening. Excellent work going all over around us. Gives us a bit of joy in the midst of this COVID-19 that has been very challenging for all of us. So, Alan, we are so grateful that you honored our invitation, and thank you for coming. Chairman, you're very welcome. Your seat is just right here. I was sitting on the edge of the chair because I know I was just keeping it for you. I'll find my level when I finish the speech. Yeah. So very welcome, Chairman, just in time. The chair is never delayed, always late, just delayed. So welcome, Chairman. I was just welcoming people on your behalf. Maybe I will stop it at that, given that we're already late. And I hope we can have a very insightful conversation. We are going to have the keynote address, but also which will be followed by a panel discussion by a team of 3 experts. So hopefully we'll also get a lot of new insights as we move into 2022. I always tell people that we are in a VUCA world, and that state has not yet changed. You still hear about new variants of COVID. So COVID is here for the long term. All of us had expected it to go away by now. VUCA basically means, first, the V is volatility. The world we are in is very volatile. U means uncertainty. There is a lot of uncertainty. Even now, we don't know whether January will open again, because the president was very confident, given vaccination and all the efforts that is being put in place, that by January all would be okay. But we have already seen new lockdowns elsewhere. And then the C means complexity, a very complex world. Very complex world that we are in. And then lastly, ambiguous. You can see even the rate of change is so fast for us. In 2019, we were talking at the ILO conference about the future of work, that people will work from home in the future. There will be a lot of remote work, gig economy, and all these things, but they're already right here with us. That's how fast our world has changed. So we are grateful to have you, Alan, with us. And Chair, just to welcome you, to give a few remarks, and then, Chair is just saying I just passed the mic straight to Alan. So Alan, you're very welcome to address us. Thank you so much.
Okay, Chairman of the Federation, CEOs, good morning. Are you well? You're well, huh? Oh, okay. I just heard a sound. I didn't know what you said. I'm glad to hear and to see and to know that you're all doing very well. It's a real honor and a privilege for me to be here. I know we use that opening phrase as a speech opener, but I want it to mean more than that for me today. This is my very first time to come to the Federation. I don't know why you've never invited me before. No, you actually have. It's just been a little bit complicated to be here. But why I say it's an honor and a privilege to be here today is because of the current environment we're living in. And I think every leader who is worth his salt should be grateful that you are in a position in this environment, because there is no environment in our lifetime that is going to define your leadership like the COVID environment we're working in. This is such a wonderful, very unfortunate, but very wonderful platform to stand up and be outstanding as a leader. Because nothing defines leadership like adversity. And nothing gives you the ability or the step up in leadership as a time that is so difficult, where everybody's eyes are looking to you, and you either stand and be outstanding or you collapse. You are all very much aware, and it has just become that much harder in the last 1 week, maybe almost 10 days, when a new variant, I don't think it was started in South Africa. I really doubt that it did, but that's where we first heard about it. It's become that much harder because we've never had to deal with a variant that has 35 mutations, meaning you don't know at what time it has changed and whether your protection, because most of us are double vaccinated, I hope, you don't know whether you're protected anymore. What is even more grave right now is that we actually don't know enough. Neither does World Health Organization. If you've been listening to the news for the last 3 days, the information is we are researching, we are finding out, we are investigating. So the uncertainty has been pushed up maybe 10 notches. So if there's ever been a time in our lifetime for you to stand up and be the leader that you were designed to be, it is now. And so what I share with you, some notes from leadership experts that you know, but I'm tempted just to speak a little more freely from my own experience, if it has any value for any of you, but also to show that there are others who've gone before us, who have made a mark in our world in their time, and that we can follow. We don't actually have to reinvent. So it's not that gray. We do not have to wonder what do we do when, because there are others who've been there before. So if there's a good time to be a student of leadership, it is now. To pick those real key lessons that help you lead your team. Because whether you like it or not, every eye is on you. Every eye in National Water, in MTN, in UNRWA, every eye is on you. And it is not on you to judge you whether you're a good leader. This time it is on you to ask for direction, for guidance. What do we do? And you can feel that weight, can you? I do. I feel that weight. When you must actually invent, because you yourself have never walked this journey, you've never walked this way before. So you are forced to be creative on the go. And why it's even more critical is because we are talking about life and death. Could it be any more important and more critical than that? Is there a time when you have had to be responsible, not just for the well-being of your staff, but for their lives as well? Around the middle of last year, towards the end of last year, going all the way up to the middle of this year, in UNRWA, we lost staff. We lost staff, and I've never felt so helpless. I had one incident which is etched on my mind. One young engineer in one of our stations managing a project, young man, very energetic, contracted COVID. And the fever became a cough, and then it became pneumonia. He was admitted, and I got a call in the middle of the night, and the hospital had no oxygen. That was in Mbarara. The hospital had no oxygen. I made every call I knew of any person I knew in Mbarara who could get a cylinder. And there was absolutely nothing. In the middle of the night, I asked one of our people to look for a pickup, to look for empty cylinders, go and park at Namave. I think they were filling at Namave at that time. And I said, as soon as they open, fill these cylinders, rush to Mbarara. He managed to get the cylinders there in time. He was on a very high oxygen, I don't know what it's, when you are very critical, the flow of oxygen had to be very, and he expired. This was my staff, and I knew him, and everybody loved him. And in a real way, I felt like I had failed that young man. So you will feel it. I have felt it. I'm sure you have felt it as well. When you've done all you've done, and you lose somebody. But what do? Do you buckle? Because you've lost somebody? Or do you, in spite of what you feel, stand up and tell staff, we will overcome this. We will come out of this. And you give directions, also knowing that you are just as exposed as everyone else. But if there's ever been a time to be at the forefront, it is now. This is when generals lead battle from the front, not from behind. So this 1.5 years, almost 2 years, has been like no university I have ever been to. No institution I've ever been, no lecture I've ever been to which has impacted my life. Nothing prepared us, but nothing has taught us to lead our institutions to become that CEO that history will write about, because in this season, it has required of each one of us to, I think if there's one quality I would like to say has been helpful for me, and I'm sure you, because you're all CEOs, you know that you've had to employ it. If there's one tool that has been useful for me, is to anticipate before anything happens. Anticipate. You work in your brain, in your mind, a situation which has not manifested yet. And you deal with it, and then tell people, this is what we are going to do when this happens, so that they are ready. Our greatest task and role right now is to make people ready. Because will Omicron get to Uganda? You can count on that. The way we are connected as a world, it's probably already here. That's why I was a little bit surprised that we don't have enough sanitizers around the tables. Okay, one each, that's fine. I think that's enough. But what else should I tell my people? I have about approximately 1,400 staff scattered across the country. What else should I tell them that I did not tell them last year? Because last year, I'll tell you some of the things we went into. What do I tell them now that the threat level is higher? Remember, you're not just talking about your top team. You're not just talking about your staff as individuals. You're talking about their families, their children. Because when you lead in adversity, you're no longer leading 1,400 people. You're leading 1,400 people times about 5, the average home these days. Are you with me? I keep asking that question because if I don't ask it, I think I'm going off track. Yes. So this is where we are. And often the difference between an institution progressing in this time and actually thriving is how you employ the leadership tools in this period. All around us, companies are closing, businesses have closed. When you read the international news, I think we have not been as adversely affected as other nations. We should thank God for that. I really think there's a lot that our government has done that has saved some of our businesses and some of our organizations. But government I don't know what government is, because when we talk about government, it's like there is a building or an institution called government. It is you and I. So how do you, at this time, make sure that your businesses not just survive, but thrive? A friend here just told me how his business thrived in COVID. Is it because he took advantage of people? No, because we began to think completely differently and nobody stayed behind to work the way they've always been in their comfort zone. So look, we will never go back to where we came from. That's for sure. That's a promise. I think you all know that. We will never go back. But what is it in this complete unknown area that we can anchor our organizations, our people in, that will help us overcome? Because let me tell you, as sure as the sun has come up and will go down today, that this will pass. I doubt, and I'm a Christian and I pray and I read my Bible, I don't think this is the end of the world. It will come and it will pass, but when it passes, who will be standing? Which institution will be standing? What strategies, what methods of work, what tools will be standing? And I hope as we speak this morning, you're beginning to coalesce, to bring together those things that you can look back 5, 10 years from now and say, because we did this, we were able to take graphic systems through this very difficult system, through this difficult period. So, March 2020 changed our lives a lot. Not just our lives, but our bottom lines also changed. It was a defining moment for our country, for our lives, to prevent further spread of COVID-19. The period until now has been extremely difficult for all of us. We lost friends, we lost relatives. I always think of June and July as a very dark period for most of us. June, I think May, June, and July this year. And I hope we never, ever go back to that period. So we're in a remarkable transition. Leaders led unseen. The very first time we started teleworking, because when you have been privileged to lead some of these institutions for quite a bit of time, you are used to the concept that you must be visible. But visibility became the first victim for every leader. So it was new for me to lead unseen. it challenged those of us who are in the public sector, who lead public service or public institutions. Because traditionally, for me, I've always only worked in a public institution. I've never worked in private sector. And so we are used to these rigid working hours, 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock. And if you are a good public servant, you should be in before 8 o'clock and leave after 5. So we're used to that. And I had to be comfortable with people not showing up or half the team showing up because we determined that we were going to abide by all the SOPs as given, religiously abide by all the SOPs given by the Ministry of Health. I needed to be comfortable that even if we were working online, that people were actually working and not switching on their computers and hiding behind the, what is it called, self-view, where it shows your picture and you're not there. I needed to be comfortable that I can no longer demand to see people face to face. All I needed was work. I needed to be comfortable with the fact that we still were required to bond. Because when we talk about bonding programs, you know what it means. We talk about retreats, we talk about all sorts of exercises we go through, we talk about, chatting with one another, having a cup of tea together. How do you bond online? How do you make sure that somebody's breathing behind the computer? So a lot of things we dropped. In a public service, it was hard. I know a number of institutions that struggled with it because they had not invested in computers. Thankfully, that is now a lot less. I think most institutions now know that we will continue teleworking. So these are the changes, the trends that have taken place. Everything is digital. So we have a lot more information easily available than we did before. If we ever needed a boost or to fast track the digital or information age, COVID just did that for us. Because suddenly everything is online and that information is stored. Like I said again, those of us who've worked in public service, a lot of the information we had was what we were taught when we went through our training and induction, and it was information from experience. But if you ask to see it in a book somewhere, you might not see it. Now, it is there. You can click it and get it. We have entities that are now almost impossible to define what their business is. Because telecom companies have become financial companies. Delivery companies. Safe border. I don't know how many of us as CEOs actually thought about partnerships with what we thought at that time were these small border companies. Can no longer call safe border companies in that derogatory term. Because we literally depend on them. And you wait, if we go into another lockdown, all your food, all your documents during earlier this year, when we were in that second lockdown, I still had to sign some documents. Most were digital, but in public service, there are some documents that require a signature, handwritten signature. And I needed somebody to deliver it to me and to take it to the next level. And none more capable than these ones. When I needed a certain staff and I could not put him in a taxi, the safest place was a border. So we have companies that have taken on a completely new profile because of this environment we're living in. The emergency of other companies that didn't seem necessary at that time. I mean, teaching kids. My sister has a school. It's a private school. And they reduced the work, but they didn't stop teaching. I saw little ones, you know, these 4-year-olds you send to your preschool, being taught by teachers, jumping up and down and encouraging them to sing, and parents participating. I remember that was the biggest challenge, to get the parents to participate, because what do we do as adults? You send your kids to school as if they are, you know, school is your nanny, because you're busy doing something else. And this time, parents needed to participate, because how else would you know that your child is learning their ABCs, unless you as a parent is there to make sure that the teacher is not only doing their job, but their child is learning. So a lot of things have changed. So, Madam or Mr. CEO, what is keeping you awake now? For me, what keeps me awake is finding the solution of the problem that has not come yet. What keeps me awake is designing a solution of a problem that has not happened yet. Solving tomorrow's problems today. Because when the problem arrives, if I am not ready with an answer, there is simply no time for me to sit back and design that solution. I'm going to jump some of these pages because of time. So what, or talent that is hungry to reinvent? Not only are we ourselves having to learn on the job, but your staff, you scan your people. If you have people who want to stay where they have always been, they are dead weight on you, because we will never go back. So right now we look for those who are ready to innovate and reinvent themselves, because some also, like you, realize we will never go back, so they reinvent themselves. What are we doing instinctively? We are moving faster. Speed is a choice. We can no longer take our time, because you don't know how fast this situation is changing. The economy is slowing down, but leaders must pick pace. Why? Because if you slow down with the slow pace of the economy, guess what happens? You will stagnate. So we are forced to increase momentum. So you build the muscle to act fast when required. You watch out for those who, the enemies of speed. I don't know about you, but sometimes I've found that in my workplace, you give an instruction, you want something done, and people are moving slow. You realize this one is going to slow me back. So I find myself constantly, and I think it's almost instinctive. It's not something I wake up thinking, today let me go and do this. I'm instinctively telling people, faster, faster, faster. Why? Because the service we require is needed in an economy which has been hit by COVID. How can you tell if you are living up to the leadership required of you? How can you tell if you are living up to the leadership that is required of you? Are you anticipating change? If you're not anticipating change, you are probably not living up to the leadership. If you're not anticipating change. That's why I came in and I said, I think we can almost be sure that Omicron is here, that variant. That's a change. That's a change, and it is a change that changes that fast. 35 mutations, really? How do you know what you're dealing with? How do you know if you are living up to the leader expected of you, you are ready to abandon old practices? You're one of those who will say, okay, this may have worked in the last 15, 20 years, but it will not work anymore. And it may be something that you have always been known by. This is one of our challenges with us who lead these institutions. You get to have a persona. People identify you with certain characteristics. But if they can't work now, don't hold on to them. They will hold you back. So you know you're living up to the expectations if you are ready to abandon what will not work now. What can you start to do differently? What can you start to do differently? And it's different for everybody. I don't have the ABCs of leading in COVID times because we're all new here. And it maybe have been a year, and I know already books have been written, movies have been made, lectures have been given. But it's so changing so fast that what worked last year may not work today. So what can you do differently to be effective? That is something you must design yourself. If I gave you one and it didn't work, you might think that was a hoax. But if it worked for me, it may actually not work for you because our environments are totally different. We're leading different institutions. So everyone must discover for themselves what will work differently. I think I've mixed up my pages, so let me put them here so I don't end up confusing you. What can you retain from your old leadership style? So those were two questions. One, what can you do differently? What must change? But let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. Not everything in your journey of the last 30 years as a leader has been bad. Otherwise, you would not be here. So what do you pick? What do you pick from your leadership experience, which is fast changing, that takes you through the current one? One, be positive. Nobody wants to be led by a gloomy, depressed leader. No. No one. It doesn't matter what the circumstances, the environment. So remain positive, remain strong, remain upbeat, even at your expense, when you don't feel like it. Why? Because it releases energy for those who are looking up to you. So don't come into the office saying, we have been hit badly. You probably have been hit badly. But what are you telling your staff? What are you transferring when you come into the office like that? Be proactive. I have said that, I think, like in 3 different ways since I started. Think ahead. Solve the problem before it happens. Anticipate. delegate. Every management book I've read has that as delegate. Maybe there is a reason why there is emphasis on delegation. Because you're a finite person. Your flesh and blood, you can only be in this place at this hour. But your work must continue. So whatever you did in the past to delegate, continue doing. You may not be visible, but you must be approachable. You've got to be approachable, maybe now even more than before. Because where you have lost contact, physical contact, people must know that you can be reached. Fortunately, even online, which is much more now. When we had a lull, when we've had this lull in infections, I've taken opportunity to move around the country. And it's an amazing thing. But I don't know how long that is going to last. I hope it will last long if we are careful wearing our masks and washing our hands. And for sure, today we've failed in social distancing. I hope we can maintain the ability to move. But should we not be able to be approachable? Because your visibility now will not be in you being in their face. It is them knowing you are nearby and you can be reached. Be accountable. You were accountable before. Continue to be accountable today. Don't be the one that cuts corners. Continue to be accountable. Be decisive. And maybe this is another one, in addition to anticipating, this is another key one. Because the ground is shaking. The ground on which we stand as leaders is shaking. And people look for that one thing that is firm. Be decisive. Make the decisions now. Be decisive now. Take that risk now. Be deliberate. Nothing is as discouraging as a leader who is not firm and directed in their leading of people in a difficult situation. Deliberate, intentional. Let me address some of the 8 that I've just given above. No, let me skip this because I want us really to have this discussion. Let me share with you some of my own experiences. In February last year, we began to hear about this virus from China. It's a pity that we say it's from China because I don't know whether we can prove it's from China. But we began to hear about this virus. And then it began to spread, and you could see on the globe, you know, the news, you could see how fast it was spreading. It jumped very quickly to the US. I remember clearly, I think it was in March, before any lockdown, when it had gone to Europe, I think it had just gone to Egypt. We had just heard about it because I think Egypt was one of the first countries that I thought, do we actually know what we're dealing with? So, anticipating, I looked for an epidemiologist, one who studies epidemics. And I said, there is debate on the news on whether this should be declared a debate or not, but the way it is spreading, are we safe? And this person told me, no, you're not. This person actually told me, it is going to come. I've studied epidemics, it is going to come. And this person told me, you just pray that when it comes late after it has been everywhere, and you are the last people in the world to get it. That it should reach Uganda late, because by that time, Researchers have worked, have found more information, and we have known how to prevent ourselves. But this person told me it will come, therefore prepare. So I said, okay, so if it's going to come, what is going to happen? He said, this one we are still learning, but the ones I've seen before looks very much like that Spanish flu. So people will die. I said, what? She said, yeah, people will die. There's nothing as frightening as being told people will die and you don't know whether that is going to be you or people close to you. So fear completely took over. This person told me, resist fear because fear paralyzes. So after this person had thoroughly shaken me, I called a few people in office. I said, the one thing I learned in URA, now I'm in UNRWA, was that for you to go through a crisis, you must have two things, a strong business continuity management strategy and a very strong communication. So almost into March actually, we formed a business continuity strategy. We didn't have one in UNRWA, we had one in URA. This is where I learned this. So we formed one immediately without any research or consultancy or any sort of preparation. There was simply no time because what this person told me is that people will die. And you know when someone tells you people are going to die, there is no time for committee meetings and board approvals. I said, okay, so let's see how does business continue. But more importantly, more than business was how do we secure the lives of our staff? Everything we did at that time, we did on the go, learning on the job. So the team was set up, which I think really, I thank God that was by far the best decision to start that early. And we set up a very strong communication team. Even before, and I don't know whether I had authority to do this or not, but it's too late. It worked. I told people, stay home. Now, if you are a public servant and somebody tells you stay home, that sounds like paid leave. But we told them, stay home, but we will expect these results from you. So we will give you work, you will just give us results. Do not come to office. Some of the big shots in UNRWA struggled with that more than the junior cadre. Why? Because we big people like to be seen. We like to, our status seems to come from our visibility. But we could no longer be there. So some people kept showing up in office until we actually put policemen at the doors and said, stay home. Stay there, don't come. We don't want you in office because we need you alive. And that meant that we had to very quickly upscale technology and use of online systems. Then we got who I think is one of our best communicators in UNRWA to just constantly tell staff, be careful, wash your hands, wear your mask, keep distance. And what we told him is, it doesn't matter how irritating it is for people to hear you say this, just continually say it. Because that's how you change behavior. That's how you create habits. When there is a constant message to you to do this, we wear masks almost instinctively now. In fact, when you walk around and somebody's not wearing a mask, they are the odd one out. Why? Because those messages, thank you, those messages have been constant. So not only must your message be constant, it must be aligned. You must not create confusing messages, because Ministry of Health was also issuing messages. So every message that we sent out, we would say, in accordance with this message from the Ministry of Health, it had to be consistent, and the presidential addresses. consistency is important to take your people through, because consistency helps you in times when everything else is moving. So we set up a very strong communication strategy. And it has continued, and it has helped us even when we have had different crises. A few months ago, we got a huge budget cut. After we got the budget cut, the rains came. Now, if you work on roads, you know what that means. Double disaster. The bridges were washed away, the places are flooded, and you have no money. We needed to deploy the same team. If you remember, November last year, there were some riots here in town. The same team had learned how to communicate, telling people, be safe. Even now when these bombs came, these ones of 3 or so weeks ago, same thing. Because that business continuity and communication team had learned that you employ these strategies irrespective of what the disaster might be. And it was important also for all staff to know that every person matters, every hand on deck. Every hand on deck is a term that is used by the marine business. When the ship is sinking, you need everybody's effort to save the ship, every hand on deck. And the results were amazing. When circumstances let the team leaders emerge as the real leaders for work, the results were spectacular. And we needed also, this is something that I learned you must do when things are dark. You shine the light on those who are doing well. This is the time to reward people. This is the time to celebrate the difference makers. Because when things are going well, it doesn't give much energy, excitement. But when things are hard, there are people who are working extra hard. So this is the time to reward staff, not when things are going well. Don't wait for Christmas, please, to give your hampers and awards. Do it in that season. Because when people are working hard and sacrificing their lives and they are recognized, it reduces the burden on their shoulders. We had staff, a lot of us were working from home, but we had staff who could not go home. They had to encamp. For example, our ferries team, because ferries had to keep moving. We had to make sure that the health teams were moving across the country. So those ferries people, we told them, bring your tents or uniports or hire a place near the ferry. That's where you will stay. And that lockdown was not short. Not only that, they had to be sure that the people whom they were carrying, some of them had COVID, but they had to protect themselves and protect the people as well. These were so amazing young people. Normally the ferries team, we don't celebrate them. We somehow think, these are people who are just ensuring that the ferry is sailing. They became our most celebrated staff because they couldn't go home. They had to stay there. Our security teams, we have our installations are guarded. They couldn't go home. They stayed there. Policemen were sleeping in the offices. And those are people that you celebrate at this time. Seeing the energy that came out of recognizing them, I realized we sometimes lose the ability, or we miss the ability to increase production because we do not recognize those people. So what can I say for leading passionately in the 21st century, in the now? A quotation familiar to most of you who have read Maxwell's books. John Maxwell, get the right people on the bus. The right people on the bus are not necessarily those who have the right qualifications. It's the right people in this situation. but they cannot lead in adversity. They crumble. This is not the time to baby anybody. This is the time to actually say, in this situation, I don't need you. I need that young man there. Because he knows how to lead people out of adversity. It is these people that will keep you moving forward, cheerfully charting unknown waters and creating new standards for you. And for me, as I look back over the last, is it 18 months? Maybe it's about 20 months now, from last year, today. I thank God that I got the opportunity to lead an institution, public institution, and to not stop work, because we're one of those that were told you must continue working. And to continue leading and still be standing today and saying, if Omicron comes, we will go through it because we have already gone through an experience we were not prepared for. We are much, by the way, we are much better prepared now, even if the variant is mutating very fast. We are much better prepared now. We have more body of knowledge. So if we survived that period, we shall survive today. The stakes may be higher. You may have to ask people to go back home, but you know what to do when that time arrives. And I thank God that we are still connecting Uganda. I thank you very much.
Thank you so much. A round of applause again. Alan, what better person than you? I'm extremely delighted because I was fully in class. Unfortunately, not paid for, but I did a full course just in a few minutes. So I'm extremely grateful to you, especially the element I liked most, anticipate. I think we get caught up in the routines in most cases. We have a standard way of work. We even sometimes have a fixed budget, a fixed plan. Everything is already sort of preset in advance. So when things change around, it's very difficult for us to try to readjust. More so when we have many consultations lines like I do at the Federation, we serve the employers. We had to do our AGM online. The provision was not even there in our constitution. If we hadn't done that, you were talking about breaking the law a bit. If we hadn't done that, we wouldn't have had the AGM. Yeah. We wouldn't literally, last year, we wouldn't have had the AGM. So thank you so much. I know we are short on time, but I think I will allow a few questions to come so that, or even comments, some reactions, so that we can have a bit more conversation before we move into the panel discussion. So the floor is open, but you're all safe. No one will sink down. Any questions or comments? I think we are all good. Yeah, so thank you so much for this. Yes, Chair. Yeah, welcome.
Because I have to leave. Okay. So thank you very much. I come here to really thank my sister Ellen, because I know she will leave shortly. And I want to apologize for coming late. The program interfered in my exercise in the morning, and I had to be disrupted a little bit. But I am very, very happy to see all of you here on this session. Alan, you've taught me so many things. I've written so many notes. And one of the lessons I want to learn here, and maybe I want to share with you, if you have an institution which says it has fully learned that is the beginning of its death. So everybody must be ready to learn and learn all the time. And that's why I was taking notes, because these were very, very good points. The other issue which is affecting us, especially during this COVID, is the issue of productivity. The issue of productivity in national data, for example, when COVID came, our revenues had to automatically go down. They had to go down, but we had to continue working. Now, those who understand economics, we now have to look at what they call the input-oriented measure of productivity. And what does that mean? How do you struggle to keep the same output, but with very little inputs? Sometimes it can be very painful. Sometimes it might mean you apply redundancy clause of the Employment Act or even of your human resource manual to see how you can work with fewer staff and be able to produce the same output. It's a very serious question, and I see it a very relevant question in these incidences. Then Alan talked about adaptation. You definitely can't survive this period, or you can't survive periods like this without adapting. People who didn't know how to use computers, for example, suffered. They suffered a lot. Alan was talking about a communication strategy. For me, in national water, I was the communication strategy myself. So I had to make sure every 2 or 3 days, I spend like 10 minutes, I go on my phone there, I design a message, 10 minutes, assuring staff. Because when COVID came, one of the things which came in the minds of staff is we are going to be retrenched, there will be no money to pay us, and that can be a very serious demotivator. Now, there is no PRO of an institution that can assure staff during that time of adversity other than the CEO himself or herself. So I had to do it and send out messages. Fortunately, in national water, everybody is on a certain WhatsApp group, and we know them. So you can send an audio message so that everybody can get the assurance from the top person. And when COVID relaxed a bit, when I was moving around, I received a few goats of COVID. So I want to thank you very much, Alan, once again. I want to thank all of you for being invited and coming. Those who are members of the Federation of Ugandan Employers, we want to thank you for the support. Those who are not, or who are but not active like Alan here, we want to invite you to be active. We want to invite you. She's active? Yes, she's but I've never seen her at the Federation. I don't think she knows where it is. No. You don't know. So we want to invite you. We want to invite you to come and support us so that we have that very strong arm of the tripartite arrangement of the labor organization to be strong. Because there we have the government, we have the employer, then we have the employees. Now the employer by law here is represented by the Federation of Uganda Employers. So it's a very, very important institution, but people tend to underrate it. And yet that's where you can make a contribution that can help us to drive the labor institution in this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Now I will request on a short notice Mr. Rajesh to just give a vote of thanks. I know Alan is going to leave us shortly, and then I will hand over to our moderator to continue with the panel. Please. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning to all of you. On behalf of Federation and behalf of all of you present here, I would like to thank Alan for the thoughts of wisdom and the thoughts of leadership which he has shared with us. And I've seen many of us have taken notes, as our chairman has said, And during this COVID time, I also played a role the way you were suggesting, so I know what exactly it means. So thank you. But again, we should anticipate, as you said, the new mutant virus is coming, so we should anticipate and take whatever necessary action which we have to take. So thank you, Ellen, for that.
Thank you so much, Rajesh, and thank you again, Ellen. We are extremely grateful. And Chairman, thank you for honoring our invitation, even when we interfered with your exercise a bit. I know you can catch up later. So I'll hand over to Ricky. Otherwise, his job is not safe. You know, these uncertain times. He's the moderator, so he's at risk if I continue like this. So I'll allow him to lead us into the next session, the panel discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Douglas. You thought I was a lady? It's good that you are the chair. I can't say much on that. But Chair, Dr. Engineer Silva Mugisha, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate, and I also take the comment not in a very bad faith, though it makes me a little bit uncomfortable. You have issues with my dreadlocks. This is Africanicity. This is being Ugandan. This is being proud. This is boo-boo. This is being proud of what God has given to me. Miss Allen Kajina, I've never in my life attended any of your presentation in person. I've heard so much about you. Actually, I have friends who say the friends of their friends of their friends went to school with you. And they used to say great things about how strong you are and how informed you are about whatever you choose to speak about. Today, I actually realized that we were in a lecture room because everyone was quiet. These were the most disciplined students. Everyone was taking notes, including the chair. We just need to get the feedback afterwards, like they just need to be marked. But thank you so much for the presentation. This was more than a keynote address. It was a very insightful deliberation, and I think all of us has got a lesson to learn from that. I just want to request all of you and to announce that FUE, Federation of Uganda Employers, has always been on social media. This discussion is live on Twitter, and adapting to the new normal, to the new situation. It'd be good that all of you takes a selfie or tweets the things that you learned, especially from the keynote address that has just been delivered, so that the rest of you who did not get the opportunity to be here in person also gets to know about what was happening here. So FUE, if you want to find FUE, you go to Twitter. It's at FUE Employers UG. And the hashtag, which is already trending, I hope so it is already trending. When all of you tweet, it will start to trend. When all of you refuse to pull up your smartphones and don't tweet, it will not also trend. So the hashtag which is about to trend after all of you have tweeted is FUE CEO Meet, which is the second CEO meeting happening this year. I'm also on Twitter. Feel free to follow me. I'm not a celeb, but I'm also on Twitter at Ricky Rapper. And the business that I co-founded is also on Twitter at safeborder.com. And all of you are also on Twitter, so make sure you use your own Twitter handles, not the business Twitter handles, so we can rate that to you. So straight up, we are going for the panel discussion. And in no order, allow me invite the panelists. And please feel free to take any of the chairs. It's not arranged in any special order. Okay, I've just realized I've gained some powers here. Being asked to allow them to leave. Madam and Mr., I give you the permission to leave, and thank you so much for serving this country. Thank you. Thank you. I think it's a great thing to actually be the moderator or the MC. You gain some short-term powers, which if you use it well, you can be appreciated in future. So please allow me invite our panelists. In no order, I'll start with, I've been informed she's doctor, which is very true. Dr. Agasha Birunji, I hope she's around. Thank you. Dr. Agasha Birunji, I will have to read this because I have to read this so that I don't make any mistake. Please take in a chair. Dr. Gasa is the Chief Executive Director at Hospice Africa, Uganda, which is a thriving 28-year-old, I don't know if I know the meaning of that word, palliative care organization. She attributes Hospice Africa, Uganda accomplishment and our ability to steer the entire organization during this challenging COVID-19 pandemic to working with and trusting a very loving God. He has, among many other provisions, blessed her with a committed and self-driven team at Hospice Africa, Uganda. This wife and mother, in our simplicity, is an emerging leader in the health sector, whose aspiration is to see equity in access to health care for all Ugandans. Please, let's clap for her again. I hope I did a good job there. Our second panelist is Mr. Jean Philip, and then the other name, Bittencourt. Is that the right pronunciation? Please don't call the security to get me out because I didn't read your name very well. But I know Mr. Jean is a very, it's a name that I can easily relate to. The words are quite many. Please take in a chair. I need to get closer. Mr. Jean Philip has 36 years experience in hospitality, of which 22 as hotel general manager. Graduated from a jointly coordinated hotel management program by Cornell University and ESSEC French Business School in 1991. Is that true? Huh? The date is correct. The year is correct. With also a degree in economics and social, okay, I missed out something. Okay, in 1991, with also a degree in economics and social science from the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. Please, if there are any issues with the pronunciation, you forgive me. Mainly worked for luxury and upscale properties owned. Managed or franchise located in different parts of the world, including Africa, Middle East, South America, and Europe. Wow. A career experience built working for different hotel international companies, including Sheraton by Marriott International, before Starwood, Sofitel and Pullman by Accor, Holiday Inn and Crown Plaza by Intercontinental Hotel Group, Disneyland Paris by Disney, Le Méridien by Air France. Solid experience with hotel openings, having been in charge of 4 openings, 2 in UAE, Dubai, and Abu Dhabi, both Sofitel 1 in Bahrain, Sofitel Resort 1 in Argentina, Holiday Inn, Crown Plaza, and participated of the New Bay Resort opening. I'll continue with this later, but it's quite a wealth of experience, and I hope you guys can all see that. Please feel free to read more about Jean. It's quite a wealthy experience. Thank you so much, Jean, for joining us. A lot of those words, a lot of those places I've never been to, so it's a lot for me to also be able to learn. Maybe we shall have this discussion later, and a lot of those hotels I've never been to, apart from this one that you're actually managing. You know, I'm a border man, so I don't really get time to go to these hotels. This is my first time here, I think, also. I usually stop at the gate. You don't even enter inside. Also, allow me welcome Mr. Our third panelist, Mr. Francis Kamolege. Francis, you're welcome. Francis, this is a very summarized one. I will not struggle with it. Francis is the country's senior partner of PwC, as well as a member of the PwC Africa Board of Governors. He has been working with PwC for 26 years. He is certified public accountant, fellow of the Certified Chartered Accountants, FCCA, and Chartered Tax Advisor, CTA. Thank you, Francis, for joining us. I hope I've not forgotten with any other panelist. All right, let me take my seat. Please make sure the mics are working. I hope they are all working. Hello. Mic check. And be able to speak. I think for me, fine, no problem. All right. So thank you, everyone, and thank you, panelists, for taking time to join us. It's been a difficult situation that we've gone through as a country, as business leaders, and basically, this CEO breakfast meeting is an opportunity for us to be able to learn, but it's also an opportunity for us to be able to openly speak about the issues that we have continued to go through as different business leaders. Before we start the discussion, I just want to encourage all of you, if you have not joined the FUE forum, please make sure to reach out to Beatrice or any other person, not the chair, but I'm also going to be available there. I cannot help that much, but Beatrice is at the door. She will provide you with more information for those who want to join FUE. So basically, the topic for today is about leading with passion and adapting to the new model in the challenging business environment. As I said, from around last year when COVID hit, a lot changed, and many other people had to do things that they have never done before. When Ms. Allen was speaking here, she said some of the things that she went through or some of the things she had to do were things that she had never learned from any university, or she'd never faced in her life, or she never knew she would get herself into. So to our panelists, could you just introduce yourself? I think I start with Mr. Jean. Just introduce yourself and tell us, maybe just give us a bit of a reflection of what you did or what you went through regarding the new normal that every business or the private sector is going through and government at large.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First, thank you very much for this invitation from the Federation of Ugandan Employers to participate of this forum. Thanking for organizing this forum here at Sheraton Kampala Hotel. My apologies for the space. We were not expecting so many people into the situations. It's one of the key things that we live in every day, and most of all in this time. So we had to adapt. I hope you are comfortable, and I hope you will enjoy the breakfast after the session. I would like to talk mainly about my personal experience through this crisis and the moment we are living, and what we expect from the future. I was very, I would say I rejoin completely the presentation from Ms. Allen and Mr. Mugisha. I think that all of us went through the same situations in our different contexts. In hospitality, it has been a big challenge. Our sector, the tourism sector, as all of you might have heard and noticed, has been badly hit since the beginning. and still now. It's not, there are periods that we start seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and then something happens. So that's why I say every day is a new day. And when we talk about passion, we really have to light that passion every morning when we wake up and make sure we are ready to face the new adversities. So, and there have been many, and they are, I mean, COVID is what we are the most concerned today, but there are other challenges. 2 weeks ago was security. We were very concerned about the security in the country. We are still, we cannot forget about that. But I would say that in the past years, the world is changing in a way that there are a lot of challenges, especially when we project ourselves, our businesses, but also us as human beings. How will be the future? And I would say that my main concern about the future is how can I contribute to help the future leaders, the ones who are going to be in my position, your position, in some years to manage, to guide, to deal with all this challenging, the challenging world we live. COVID seems is going to be there for some time, or new pandemics, but we have to think about the environment. The environment is a main concern worldwide. I think that we all realize that if we don't do something about the environment, if we don't, if the countries, the governments don't take serious actions now, the impact in 30, 40, 50 years will be very, very serious. And we might not be here. Some of us might be very senior at this age, but we have all these young. And the youth, for me, is the most important thing. And that's how I have faced this past years, is really dedicating, investing time in creating leaders, in training people, and it's the human capacitation. And I believe that that's, as a leader, is one of my main missions. Okay, you have seen a bit of my resume. I have done many things, but I would like to transmit that to the ones that are going to be in my position. That's one of my main concerns. Of course, it's not every day easy, because you need to say, how can I better inspire people on a daily basis? And you also, as a human being, you are hit by all these challenges. You never know what's going to happen. You need one important thing that I realize, and I definitely don't do it enough. You have to dedicate some time for you, to resource yourself, to reload the batteries. Because if you don't do that, every day, our routines, every day, the news that we get, the challenges to reload, to breathe, and bring and come back with the energy that is necessary to continue leading these organizations and these people. I think it's very, very important. And the key point for me, again, it's how to make people be better, how to develop them, how to guide them in a direction that we believe is the best one for the organization and for them. An organization is nothing without people, and this is very key. I would say it's in our DNA in the Sheraton brand. Sheraton brand today, it's part of Marriott Group. So the time and the resources we spend in human capacitation, it's really very important. And that will be, I would say, my key message to share with you today in this forum. I will leave the floor for my colleagues.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jean. Just to all of you, I think I just want to say this, that Kampala Sheraton Hotel has been grateful to us, and they provide us with Wi-Fi. So if you can't access internet on your phone, you can connect on the Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi name is Conference, and the password is CONF uppercase. All of it is uppercase, 2021. Jean, I fully agree with you that the future, really, there's a lot to do with the young people, the youth. With the wealth of experience that I've just failed to read all of it right now, it shows that a lot of knowledge that has to be passed on to the next generation of leaders. And you cannot do that by dedicating, investing time in them, and continually creating leaders. I fully agree with you on those key points, and I think we all relate to that, and we all agree with you on that. If I could just get a very straightforward answer, what would be the two things that you could say about the future of work in general? One or two things that you could just say about the future, because, yeah.
One of the things that were mentioned here, I think during Mrs. Allen delivery, was about productivity. You know, when we closed this hotel last year in April, we were about 420 people working here. The business is not back at the same level, but one of the key things was how to deal with this, with the productivity, and how to make sure that every person who is here is really delivering. And so one of the important factors is the multitask. Some people were just doing one thing, so today we have people that are capable of doing different things.
Yeah.
So multitasking is one of the very important things. And I would say that today the business levels are not the same. We are almost 200 people working here on a permanent basis, and then we have casuals that we call when we have events. But I would say that the productivity levels have increased a lot. Some offices, I used to have 3 people doing somehow the same job or splitting the task. Today I have 1 person. There are tasks that were done by 2 people, and today is only 1 that can handle. So that's I would say one of the important things. And the other one I would say is it's about the training. The training has to be constant. You have to be very exigent in making sure that the people are using the platforms and the different resources which are available. It's the only way to keep people improving. In this area of service we are, it's a permanent, we need to keep consistency, we need to keep people understanding what are guest expectations, and make sure the deliveries are always the same. This is one big challenge, but only with training, with as we mentioned, proper communication, daily communication, actions also, like Ms. Allen was saying, rewarding people when we succeed, when we have a victory. We have to make sure that we pass this strong message that they succeeded, and then they need to be it needs to be celebrated as a team, as a work. The teamwork is very important, and this is about also, I would say, creating the corporate culture. The corporate culture, it's extremely important in this moment that everybody embrace the same values, everybody embrace the same strategy, everybody looks in the same direction, the vision is the same. I would say that this is something that we
Thank you, Jean.
really have to focus on.
Thank you so much. Dr. Doreen, just tell us, how did Auspice Africa, or tell us some of the strategies that Auspice Africa used to be able to survive during this difficult storm that we all went through?
Thank you very much. I'll start by explaining the word you said you don't know, palliative care. Yes, so Hospice Africa Uganda provides palliative care. I'm just going to be as simple as possible. there is curative care, and then there is so many other types of care, and then there's palliative care. So when gone are the days when doctors said there's nothing more we can do, there is something that can be done. And that is why hospice is here for you. How did hospice manage in this season? It was tough, I must say. I went to a retreat, a leaders' retreat in January of 2020, and I came back with so many ideas and so much inspiration. And then in March 2020, we have to face a lockdown and had to change everything that we were doing in order to continue to deliver services, because somebody somewhere needed pain relief, somebody somewhere needed counseling, somebody somewhere had been told there's nothing that can be done in the hospital, go home, and we needed to be in that home. It was very tough. We had to sit with the team and agree on how we're going to work, because it wasn't going to be the same way. Just like the keynote speaker mentioned, we had to strategize in some way. And the other thing was, I, as a leader, I had to look into the strengths of the team. The health workers might be a little bit different from the other maybe business entities that are in the room today, but it's very good to tap into the strength of your team. How motivated are they? How determined are they? What creative ideas have they brought on board? What are they saying they are going to do? And then how do you support them to do those things? So we literally sat in a Zoom meeting together and discussed what next. Some of the meetings were physical just before the lockdown to discuss what next. And we had to take into account every proposal that was coming on board. A lot of it was sacrifice. Of course, there was fear. How do you go to someone's home? What if they have COVID? What if you get COVID? And that was one of my constant fears. If my staff get COVID on a home visit, what happens? What do I do? Which hospital? Where do I get oxygen? As things escalated and oxygen was such a big necessity and yet so scarce, I prayed. It was too much. And you can't turn down someone. So we resorted to the telephone, and somebody's on the telephone for about 2 hours talking to a patient, or 3 hours talking to a patient, talking to the family. That was a new way of doing things. We did have telephone consultations, but it was not as intense as it was during the lockdown. And then, how do people get to work? How do people get to move around? So it was tough. One of the things that I reflect upon so much, even up to now, is who is a non-essential worker? I struggled with that so much, and it has given me we don't know. We are praying so hard against another lockdown. But if at all it happens, who is the non-essential worker? Because we had people who said, I cannot move from home. Hospice cannot facilitate my movement from home every day, but I can stay on site and make sure the site is clean, make sure the site is comfortable for people who are going to come. So there was all sorts of sacrifices from the staff, and it humbled me so much. So one thing I learned was go back to the team. Their ideas, their strengths in there, their motivations in there, self-direction in there that we need to harness as leaders and build on. And then secondly, who is that non-essential worker? How do you communicate that message? What happens when the lockdown is done and you need them back? What do you say to them? And it stuck with me so much. I didn't have so much of the non-essential workers because when you run an NGO, you kind of keep what you need. You try so hard to make sure that the team you have is just enough. So they're usually not so many. But again, you need to make sure that everyone is doing their part and they are facilitated to do their part. Embracing technology, that was another big thing, because patient and health worker interactions are usually physical. So trying to do these things virtually was not very easy for many, but we had to learn, and we had to make sure that we learned, and that's how we managed to continue. And then maybe lastly I can say is running an NGO requires fundraising. Some of you that have NGOs here that know, we had to think a new way of doing it. It was not easy because we were used to, dinners, breakfasts, gatherings where you convince people on a cause and they embrace it. But this time we had to know how to reach people virtually, how to reach people who, who may not even be knowing what social media is. There are some people who just are not interested in WhatsApp and Twitter and all these things. So it's been a journey, a very big learning time. And yeah, those are some of the things that we had to do to make sure that we continue.
Thank you. I mean, fundraising is really one of those key issues, and I think many people went through difficult times trying to raise funds, depending on what angle you actually take. It's also been very difficult for some other businesses, including ours or mine. Getting funds in this country is quite tough as well. Mr. Francis, who is the non-essential worker? At PwC, we don't want to assume that you guys have been in very serious business, which could actually be true, that you guys could have been very, very busy. But just tell us, how did you guys sail through this difficult situation? And maybe if you can respond, who is a non-essential worker? That would be like the very last part of the story, though. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, it's an honor to be invited to come and share with you also personal experiences from PwC. Looking at my colleagues here, Jean from the hospitality industry, doctor from the medical, PwC being professional services provider, everything that we do is on the basis of what's going on in the economy. So if business is slow on any one of our clients or in the country as a whole, then consequently our business slows down. Our business is such that we are in business because our clients are in business. Certain aspects of the business went on the upside because of maybe some of the challenges businesses were facing, but the greater part of our business did slow down as a result. Also, we are very unique in the way that our number one resource or asset is people, which is the case with all other businesses anyway. But there are other businesses that are very asset rich in the sense that they may have a fleet of vehicles, they may have so many properties like one. In our case, it's our people. So we were really, really challenged to walk the talk in the sense that if you say people are your number one assets, then this time you really have to live that mantra or value. We have a very young workforce. Our firm is about 170 plus people. Average age is about 27. It's a very, very young group of employees. Out of that 170 plus, there are only, I think, 5 people who are above 50. So you can imagine all these young people, very intelligent, very bright and smart, brought into a professional services firm, and they learn from working with each other through mentoring, coaching. So asking them to stay home, much as we're very IT-enabled, was again a big challenge because that is really their community, that's where their society is and their colleagues. For me as the leader, I use the opportunity actually to get people to rise up to challenges of leadership. Because if you have that very many people and they're in their different peer groups, Alan was talking about communication here. To us, communication was very, very important. But again, not in mass communication because lost in translation. So you had to ensure that you have groups who fully understand and appreciate what's going on. On one hand, they have to stay working with clients remotely. On the other hand, they have to stay empowered and connected. And then those who are a bit more old school, to whom work was a place you go to, they had to learn that actually work is not about where you go and stay for 8 to 5. Work is what you do. Unfortunately, in professional services, we have a concept of time keeping and time recording. So for as long as people are doing what they're meant to be doing, and the focus is not where you are and what you're doing, but the output and the outcome, that worked for us really, really well. Staying connected was very, very important. And again, Alan did talk about that at length, because the moment you don't keep in touch with teams, then there was so much noise going on, so much misinformation, so much going on social media that people can feel lost, and then suddenly they start having their own narratives, which can be quite confusing. The other thing is, in the corporate world, we usually hide behind rules and regulations, policies and procedures, HR manuals, you name it. In this COVID environment, you had to throw all that out through the window to be seen to be doing the right thing. So, for instance, you may have your medical insurance policy, which covers an employee and their spouse and maybe 2 or 3 children, and that's it. But because of COVID and the way it was spreading and the impact it was having on the entire household and community, there was no way you are going to cut down on expenditure, for instance, on medical services and restrict it to your only employee, because that's what the policy says. So we had to get out, we had to walk away from some of those well thought out and meaningful and well-intentioned policies, but in this time, they were not going to work. So the concept of agility and being adaptive and being seen to be doing the right thing was very, very important for us. Essential worker, and before I even talk about the essential worker, I think the other aspect which to me comes very naturally, but so many other leaders in the corporate world do struggle with, is just being okay with not knowing. Because there was just so much that was happening all the time that if you pretended that you had all the answers, and you could mislead people and make very big mistakes. So it was a time where you had to be okay being vulnerable and at the same time being humble, while on the other hand trying to do as much as you can with the little information you have. I like the idea that Alan shared with us in terms of planning for the unknown. And in the business world, we have the concept of vision. But here, to me, it was envisioning all the what-if scenarios, because things were changing on a constant time, and those leaders who are so much into control and they're used to controlling everything, they did struggle, because this was a time where a leader had to be seen to be in control, while at the same time not trying to control everything. Because you try to control everything, you'll never manage. But you had to lead, and you had to be seen to be controlling, and that's to be in control, and most importantly, be the merchant of hope in a period where everybody was more or less losing hope and becoming hopeless. Essential workers, interesting debate at the beginning of the first lockdown. And again, business leaders, we need to be careful, because things that are overhyped in the so-called corporate world, which actually are not as important as we go to realize. So if you think about yourself as a CEO, a very, very busy person who is always busy being busy and even take pride in how busy you are, and if people meet you and you say, you can't get me because I'm so busy, and you have even never thought that the country or the world can continue without you driving in your very Porsche expensive car, going through security and sitting at your desk, and then everything revolves around you. We got into a situation where the government and health workers were telling you, Mr. CEO, who think you're the most important person in this world, just stay home, wash your hands, wear a mask, and social distance. And you could think, but how can that be? I'm really important. I'm a big shot in this country. How can I just stay home? And by the way, as you're staying home, The rubbish collectors, garbage collectors are essential workers, and they need to be on the street. The security guards are essential workers, and they need to be on the street. The safe border and other delivery people are essential workers. Of course, not to mention medical services providers and so many other people. Our friends in the legal profession are here, even try to go to court to ensure that actually they are put into the category of essential workers. This was a situation that brought everybody down to their level, and you got home, and then you realized, all along, I'm just a dad, and just a husband, and the kids are here, and I should just stay home. And we stayed home, and we survived. So it's really, really important just to calm down and don't overhype all these glossy things that we get involved in, and just know that the world continues without you, but for as long as you're around, make a difference and be somebody of purpose and be significant in whatever you do, but don't get carried away with these corporate titles that we have. Actually, you're not as important as you thought you were, as it may sound.
Francis, I hope you'll get out through the door, because these are CEOs, and I'm not sure if they will agree that they're not as important as you have said. But also there's history to that. Their scurries and the garbage collectors became fundamentally very important. And as the CEOs were being kept in their doors, these people were busy moving around. Their scurries, the border men like us, who were busy roaming around and delivering our services to the people. So please, let's clap for Francis for saying we are not as important as we want to be. It's really, we had a lot to talk about, but I just want to say, and give the floor to you if you may have any question for any of the panelists before I can ask them the final question, or maybe ask them to give their remarks, because we really don't have time. Jean might give us another bill. Yeah, and I'm worried for that. So if you have any question, please raise your hand. I'm happy to bring the mic closer to you. The only way you know if people are really in the same spirit and understanding, or they're devoting the discussion, is when they ask questions. So if all of you choose not to ask questions, we have a very difficult situation to answer right now. All right.
Thank you very much. My name is Brian. Do you need me to stand? No. Oh, okay. I will stand. Then, thank you very much, Ricky.
You're welcome.
My name is Brian Mkenya, and I run a seemingly small business as a team leader. So I'm important in the quotes. Back to Mr. Francis Kamlegea and raising a very important issue. With COVID happening and it changing the narrative between who is important and who isn't, I think all of us in this room have a fair bit of importance attached to our titles, our names. I'm glad that you actually made that comment, that COVID changed that narrative. My one question though is, having understood very quickly that you're not as important as you thought you were in the business sense, and that the garbage guy was seemingly more important in that moment, how have you moved, and how has that changed your perspective, and how have you dealt with your subordinates, the people who are below you in your job, and has there been any sense of, okay, I'm important when I need to be important, but when we're all together in this setting, we're all important in our rights. So I'm curious to find out how you all have dealt with this, because it's a very important issue that we always beat down on the guy who is below us because we feel like we are up there and negate their importance. And so as important people, also, I mean that literally, but also in quotes, that as we important people, how do we deal with providing that environment through which those young guys or those lower people, those less important people, in quotes again, thrive? Thank you. That's my question.
Thank you, Brian. I think the question is addressed to...
First, Mr. Kamlegea, but if they could all
make
answer.
a comment on how
Yeah.
they have dealt with knowing that they're less important. Is that correct?
Yes, I would appreciate
Thank you.
that very well. Thank you.
Please, as we take these questions, feel free to also go and grab breakfast. They're about to close it, so make sure you grab yours as we go through this last part of the program.
Thank you, Brian, for that question. I'm wrong. I'm not saying that all you guys and very senior CEOs are important. I think that the issue of priority work was in the context of the environment we're dealing with back then. Because even if you really felt you are very important, then, who are you? If you are to be allowed to leave home, where were you going? What were you going to do? For instance, if you are a GM of a top hotel like Sheraton, like our friend Jean here, and it's very important, and they tell him stay home, but says you cannot, I have a 5-star hotel and I'm really important, I should be allowed to go to that hotel. They could have left you to come to your hotel, but you'll be seated here on your own, because as far as the environment was at that point in time, business was closed, in quotes. But I think, for me, the wider point is that we need to be careful not to get carried away with titles and roles, and that we are human. Because COVID environment required us leaders to step up to be human and show the care. I don't think Alain's job description involves looking for oxygen from member of staff. It's about ED, actually it is in the UNRWA Act. So the role of the executive director is very well prescribed in the Act. And there's nothing to do with finding oxygen for member of staff who is in hospital at 2 a.m. in the morning. So you had to take away those layers and all those titles and all those accolades which trap us in the corporate world, and remember you're a human being. And remember that whatever medical insurance that you have, or UAP or Old Mutual, were to want to fly you to India or Turkey or UK or the USA, those borders were closed. And there's no way you could have a medical cover, and actually my top medical policy is up to $100,000, and please, you have to allow me in. Because everybody was just closing their borders, closing their counties, closing their districts, closing their gates to be safe. So for me, what I learned as a business leader is we need to be humble. We need to remember that we're human. We need to not get carried away with titles, which titles will go away. And we've seen it with so many of our political leaders. He's honorable, and then he turns up late, and everybody is told to stand up, and even those people who came on time are told, you move away so that so-and-so sits here, and then the speech is already underway, mass is already ongoing, then they give them a microphone to recognize them, and 5 years later, the CAMUFU goes against him or her, or the general election goes against him and her, and suddenly they just fizzle away quietly. So for me, my lesson is try and be somebody of significance beyond that title you carry, because that title will go away at some point. And if you're that kind of person, then this idea of telling you, stay home, but the garbage collectors are the important people, will not hurt you in any way. Because can you imagine staying home 2 weeks without your rubbish being collected? But you can stay home for 2 weeks without you calling your lawyer. You can stay home for 2 weeks without meeting your accountant. That's my message.
Thank you so much, Francis. Thank you. I mean, that was really, really insightful. Actually, I just wanted to add something that on what Francis says, that of course sometimes we have bad leaders that even when you're in charge, they come late. And when they come late, they move everyone. Then before the program is properly interrupted, they're given the microphone. They speak. Before the program ends, they're out. Okay? So it's important that we remain humble. Yes, they come late, they interrupt the entire program, they move everybody, they give a speech that is disconnected from reality, like a speech that does not help anyone, telling people about things that we can relate to, and before the mass is done, they are out of the church, right? Yeah. So, Jean, your comment on the question as well. Thank you.
So I would say titles means nothing. What means is that what you do, what you deliver. Now about the experience, how things were in hospitality, I would say the challenge was to keep connected with the people. So we have 3 different scenarios. I had to keep people here in the hotel, because little by little there was some business to be done, and the demand after the different phases of the lockdown that we started moving again, and the curfew were at the time, I remember it was at 10 o'clock, so the business was starting to come back. But we needed to keep the people on premises. The people who were here, I would say we created really a very beautiful team, more than a team spirit, a family spirit, because we were together all the time, and we had more time to talk about different subjects. We tried to get time also to organize every week a good meal, be together, and reducing all these barriers because of title, hierarchy. Then I had a group of people that stayed home but were connected. It was easier for them. Some of these people, they had families. It was complicated for them to stay here in the hotel. But still, the technology helped us to be on, I would say, almost daily basis in those Zooms, team meetings, and the connection was kept. The most challenging was the people that we didn't need them to come back immediately, and some of the people that we had to either release because contracts got to an end, or we had to put up a plan of redundancy, or I would say the solution here was more an early retirement. For these people, it was a bit more difficult to keep the communication, but we tried our best, and the directives that were given, that in each sector of the hotel, the head of section should be at least giving a phone call every week to know how are you doing, do you need something. We tried to maintain a minimal assistance in terms of, I wouldn't say it's salary, but some resources that we have, medical assistance, and to keep a certain communication. Unfortunately, in this group, there were these people that just disappeared. We haven't heard about them for long. Some of them went to the villages, and we could not get any communication. They appeared back a long time after. Some until today, I think I have 2 or 3 cases, we never heard about them anymore. So this was, I would say, the most challenging. But I see the very positive side is that we really created a very strong family spirit, teamwork, and everybody was concerned about what's the future of the organization, what will be my future. And everybody accepted the new rules. Of course, the new rules or whatever has been negotiated for the people were under agreements. And people say, yeah, we all have to do sacrifices. Everybody had to do sacrifices. And I think that proper communication and proximity with people was very key to face all these challenges.
Yeah, thank you, Jean. Yes, doctor?
Um, the first lockdown was very tough because we needed to get authorization, we call them permits, I think, to move around. And I remember when we were registering, no, you must have something for the CED. And I said, no, that's not necessary because the few cars that we have, we can't all put them into the system. It was very stringent at the time. And I said, no one should bother picking me from home because I don't need to be picked up for anything. Let these vehicles be used to pick up the nurses, take them to patients' homes, bring them to hospice. So I stepped out of this equation intentionally, and it did not in any way reduce the respect. It didn't reduce the fact that I was the decision maker, ultimate decision maker. Like, it just instead gave people the opportunity to work. And remember, the time was between something like 8 and 3. Because if you extended that, then you're probably going to end up in the curfew problem. So, and then I had to talk to some of the managers, fellow managers, and say, guys, I'm stepping out of this equation, and I'm asking you to also step out of this equation unless you have been invited to go and see a patient, because you are inconveniencing this system, this temporary system that we have put in place to make sure that the service delivery, the core service delivery, continues. So it's very humbling, I can agree, but it's also very good to be honest and take a very serious reflection on some of these things. The titles are good, they won't go away, but it matters so much how we use them in the pandemic. My worry was, who is the non-essential worker? And I totally failed to come up with that category at my workplace, because even those that ended up staying home, I had to keep engaging them in meetings to make sure that we are all doing our part. Not people sitting back and thinking, I haven't been given a permit and therefore I don't need to be at work. I don't need to be in this organization. So we created a system whereby those that were not constantly at the office, we had to deliver to each other what we were doing. We had to keep in touch. We have to keep working. We had to make sure, what are we working on? What are you doing? Which area are you focusing on, And it was very helpful in that way to communicate together on phone, on Zoom, on WhatsApp. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Now it's clear. No one is less important. Yeah, no one is less important. The title is just a responsibility. So it depends. If you use it well, be blessed. If you use it wrongly and want to wear nice suits all the time and not deliver, problems on you. Thank you. Madam, you had a question?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, CEOs, for sharing of your experiences in this time. My name is Grace Mkwaya Lule. I work with an organization called Platform for Labor Action. It advocates for the rights of vulnerable and marginalized workers. It's a legal aid service provider. I wanted to inquire of you, how were you able to deal with the issue of productivity amidst staff's welfare? In terms of mental health issues, staff have had many problems. How did you balance the two? Because during the COVID period, at its peak, we were all argued as leaders of these organizations to be very understanding of staff, that they're going through depression, issues, and what have you. How were you able to balance that so that they are able to deliver, but also to be lenient, per se, to be understanding of whether they have sick persons, whether they have, because many staff, to be sincere, were unable to deliver during this period. How were you able, especially for the corporate organizations, to say, okay, I know this staff is going through this, I won't sack them per se, but I'll support them. What exactly happened? What we would like to learn from that.
Thank you. Thank you, Grace. Are you directing your question to any of the specific panelists? Okay, whoever. All right, thank you. Poverty versus the health of our people. Maybe let's have the final last question, and then our panelists can respond to it. It's just about time. We remain with 5 minutes to end the discussion and to close the entire event. Any other question? Oh, yes, sir. Microphone, eh? You're a CEO.
International flights, but their internal flights were running, as if internally the virus would not spread and the virus are brought only by the international travelers. So this, I would like to hear the comment from the panel about this role of leadership from the various country leaders. Thank you.
Our panelists, Francis, you can comment on.
Yeah, I'll go first, mainly the one from Grace. So how we dealt with situations of the kind you've described. Earlier on, I did submit that it's an environment, a situation which required all of us, to put away many of our glossy titles, to put away the human resource manual, and actually be human. And by the way, maybe I'm speaking for myself, but many leaders do struggle to be human. Do you know why? Because again, the so-called expectations of a leader, assertive and confident and visionary and strategic and all those things that are out there that make you appear to be a very, very powerful and good and leader, while all those other things that are actually important and were discovered to be very important during the lockdown, we even call them soft skills. So in my view, the so-called soft skills actually are now the hardware a leader needs. You need to be human. You need to be humble. You must have empathy. People decided to stay away from work even after the lockdown. People actually decided to stay without jobs because of the uncertainty maybe the work environment posed to them as individuals. But most importantly, everybody at a personal level, being home for 3-4 months, started looking a bit more inward and said, what is all this about? Because, as I said earlier on, once you're categorized as a non-essential worker, and then you look at all those emails that used to come to you, your phone used to ring all the time, you used to be on the phone every other week, and then you wonder, you mean the world is going on without these things? And you mean all this stuff that I was in and trapped into, this stuff was just, a fantasy, but the reality is I actually belong here. And even government is telling me to stay home, a nice house which I built, but I've actually never lived in it for this long without leaving it. That actually got many people to do self-introspection. So it's in that process that then you reach out to colleagues as fellow human beings, not as a co-worker, not as a subordinate, not somebody who you are calling because you're checking on who it is that they're doing. And then being vulnerable, I had COVID, and you tell somebody that actually I had it, and actually this is how I coped. And then suddenly you're talking about tangawuzi, and you're talking about lemon, and you're talking about things that normal human beings talking about, as opposed to goals and objectives and targets and God knows what. And I'm not saying those things have gone away. But when we say this is the new normal, yes, those targets and objectives continue, But people are now saying it's not just about targets, it's not about goals, it is how you even achieve those goals. And I think Jean was talking about here climate change. The young people are challenging us and asking very, very different questions, because compared to the things that we used to deal with in our youth. Because they're saying, yes, it's good to make money, yes, it's good to be profitable, but it's not just about how much money you're making, but how you are making that money. I was part of the COVID National Fund for fundraising, and I was amazed at the kind of support and generosity we saw from corporates and individuals bringing almost everything. People brought eggs, maize meal, beans, and by the way, I need to qualify here before you start asking me that it didn't come to you. Our role was actually to raise money, and to raise that money, and recently you may have seen the president flagging off a whole batch of double cabin pickups, which have gone to the Ministry of Health. But even the foodstuffs that were brought were handed over to a different task force, which gave them out. But the point is, people got to realize that actually I do business within a community, and I need to be responsive, and actually need to be, to show that I care. You reflect on the values that you have in your office: integrity, teamwork, care. We were actually called upon to live those values. So there's no way you can call somebody and you say, but you are meant to do this, and now it's 8 o'clock, and you haven't checked in, and blah, blah, blah. And somebody says, by the way, I have just come from intensive care, and that's where my uncle is. There's a colleague of mine I called, and he was speaking low, and I said, what's happening? So I'm in hospital. And they said, but then why are you talking on phone? I said, but you called me. I said, okay, I'm sorry. And then later on, I send him a message and say, how is it? And says, they say I'm going to ICU. I check on him 4 days later, his son had died. Now, that just humbles you. Whatever it is that you're chasing him for, whatever it is that you thought was very important based on your budget and targets and goals and objectives, God knows what. For me, my message is, we are human, and maybe this COVID, for all the hardship that it has caused the world, there are some positives that have come out of it. The question from Mr. Rajesh, I won't be able to answer it, but I'll just share with you some research that I read. And they compared about 5 or so countries. There was Iceland, there was New Zealand, there was Germany. Those 3 countries are led by ladies. Then we had the UK, we had the US, and then we had our neighbors. I won't mention them, but the Mzee has since passed on. Positions of leadership were responding to the COVID pandemic, both at a corporate, national, and international level. And I go back to the point of the so-called soft skills versus the hard skills. The new leadership of here and now, the new normal for us as leaders, is all these hardwired things that we've known in business schools, and they're very important, and they've been very macho even by their nature. They're saying those are no longer enough. People are saying it's good to have power, but what are you doing with the power? Leadership is no longer about position, it's no longer about titles, it's about influence. It's inspiring people, it's rising up and being counted, as opposed to turning up and people mention all your accolades, and then as a result, everyone gives you a seat. And then when that title goes away, you don't even show up because you no longer feel complete. For me, that's the way I would put it. Thank you.
Thank you, Francis. I'll take that as well as being your final remarks. Sorry, my dear panelists, we're already 15 minutes late. Let's use maybe 1 or 2 minutes to respond to the issues raised by Rajesh and Grace Mokwaya, and also give your closing remarks. Thank you.
Yes, Grace. I would say that our experience here was solidarity, despite of all the constraints that we might have regarding finances, the laws, the different policies. At the end, again, we are humans. We need to be supportive. So in different moments, either regarding our associates, our employees, or the external world, we try to come with the resources that we could gather and assist. I know that myself and my managers, we have engaged with different people and trying to help them financially when the company unfortunately was not able to do it. Several people had different challenges. Some were related to having, unfortunately, to having COVID and having to stay home, isolated. Others, other diseases or any tragedies in their personal lives. We try our best to help. Nobody, I would say, stay without the support, some kind of support. And also, the hotel has always had a social role. We support certain entities, some orphanages, some entities that are related to young people or at some schools. So we tried with lesser means to continue giving a certain help, and we will continue. It's giving back to the society. The society gives us the possibility of developing our business, of making revenues and contributing, but also what we call our CSR activities. Independently of the crisis, the situation that we live, we must carry on. And that's something that the ownership of the company and also our brand also support us to continue doing. Regarding Rakesh, it's very difficult to say what is wrong, what is right. I see a lot of mismanagement on those, and it's. But again, we are very limited on how to face that. So we have to adapt ourselves. Again, we have to change according to the new rules. And yeah, and try to do our best. We are not, as a corporate business, we are not here to judge if it's a right decision that now they have blocked five countries are on the red list. Maybe we will be the next ones. We don't know. It will affect a lot of business, but somehow we are very impotent to face those things. So let's keep again the spirit of that we need to continue battling, fighting to the survival. Survival has been there, resilience has been there all this time. We shall continue with that spirit. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. And thank you for being very, very politically correct. And we appreciate you for that. Doctor, if we could have your response and your final remarks as well.
Yeah, for the last question, I must say it's a learning time for all of us, and I'll leave it at that. To respond to Grace, I learned three things. One was the individual and the context. I had to pay attention to the individual and the context because I'll give an example. We had somebody that was living very close to the workplace, very comfortable distance, and then there was some other people that were living very far. So this person stepped in without us even saying anything, and for that whole lockdown, the first lockdown, he was the person that was able to reach almost everyone. And he never really like sat down and said, oh, I need special allowance for this, oh, I should do this and that. So it's very good to understand context, to understand individuals, and know how to motivate them, know how to encourage them. And then the last, very important, this time. I mean, you're not in people's homes to see if they're giving you 8 to 5. But they're going to send you an email of the work completed, and you're going to say, okay, thank you. So there's a very high level of trust that we must have as the leaders. And the third thing is empathy. And I won't add so much to that because we've been told we need to be human. Any one of us could have got COVID. I got COVID, and at the same time I got COVID, our board chair actually passed on to COVID. So it was very, very humbling. We have a WhatsApp group as a team that has almost 3/4 of the team, and sometimes we discuss like these targets and these big things and what we call important. So we formed another one, emotional and mental well-being, where people post anything that they feel like laughing about and hoping someone else will laugh with them, or something they feel sad about, or a scripture, or whatever it is they feel like sending that anyone else would say, what are you sending? That freedom there. So we've used that platform to let people, air out and share and sort of express their fears or their unhappiness in whichever way, so that two groups sort of serve as a mental well-being platform for the different kinds of stuff that we have. You all know in different organizations, there are the very playful ones and just ones who will have straight just. So we have that platform, those two platforms, to help us both express ourselves and be in touch and stay connected and try to survive, especially the fear. It was too much fear. It was morbid fear, almost paralyzing. But yeah, that's how we thought of coming through.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, panelists, and thank you so much, everyone, for participating. I have a request, though, from a senior leader, a mentor to many, and a father. He's been doing like this. He's like, Ricky, there's something I want to say. Please, sir, you can use one or a half a minute and make your submission as a senior member of this platform.
Thank you very much. I wanted to, listening to the panelists and to the keynote speaker, there's one point I noted, which I thought I could make a comment on. When the keynote speaker talked about one of the ways forward in adapting to the new normal, she talked about getting the right people and keeping the right people on board. And this, she indicated, would be even regardless of qualifications. Now, all organizations, from what we have heard, have new ideas, and I thought this would call for a review of rules, regulations, which we have been talking about, policies, particularly the human resources manual of our organizations. So I think this is one area, because these regulations take long, they are rigid, that would need to be reviewed so that the qualifications for staff who can come to support effectively organizations would not look so much at the qualifications, but probably introduce those other attributes, like we are saying, people who have the ability to work in adversity with speed, and people who are innovative to help organizations go ahead. So that's just what I thought I would to share as we, because I'm looking at it in my organization. We see, my organization is Foundation Leads Limited. It's a consultancy firm, and we do employ quite a number of young people. But in this period of adversity, we have seen those who are really, who come up as people who are leaders in themselves, people who are innovative, they come with new ideas, and they are good. So I think we need to review for us, but I think it could be also an idea on the way forward from what we have heard from the panelists and the keynote speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you, my leader. Please tell the audience your name.
My name is Omara Peter Lamex. I am MD of Foundation Leads Limited.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I'm here with my colleague also, Pius Akecha. I don't know where he is, but yeah, he's behind there, yes. Thank you very much.
It's done in a very nice suit. I hope it's not a political party suit. Thank you, everybody. For those who have not yet joined FUE, please make it a point to join the Federation of Uganda Employers. It helps in general sensitization and training on various labor-related matters. And I'm sure they will pick up this discussion and the last submission very, very seriously, and there will be a communication to the rest of the members. One good news, though, is that Federation of Uganda Employers have taken it as their responsibility to help connect employers and possible employees. And recently they built a new website, which you can find it at www.fuemployers.org. So if you have any space and you need young people, vibrant, talented, experienced, people can get the work done, please go to jobs.fuemployers.org. You'll be able to get the profile and possibly get connected to fellow young people who also want to get opportunities and want to serve. FUE also helps and advise on employment law and compliance, also representation on various labor offices, invitation to various networking events, just like this one as well. Also, don't forget, it's also very important for me to announce that the CEO of the Federation of Uganda Employers has joined the Presidential CEO Forum. So he's an active member of the Presidential CEO Forum, and I'm sure he's doing a great job. Please, get for us some fruits from there as well when you go for those big meetings. Mr. Douglas, we want to get the fruits of you meeting the president. And next time we also want pictures to show that you were actually next to the president. These are very important proofs. So thank you everyone for participating, and thank you for tweeting. Thank you my panelists for the great participation. Thank you Beatrice and the rest of the team for giving me an opportunity to take on a new career as a moderator. I thank you all and God bless you. Best of the day. Yeah. All right, let's just move out and have a group photo together. We shall be having a group photo outside. We need to have a memory that we all participated here. And I also think now Douglas will take the opportunity to say his last word to all the participants and thank all of you. Hoping that the signal strength will allow, yes.